they separately called me anti-Paladin, so.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance first, and then we're going to have a roll call after. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Prior to roll call, I would like to make clear for the record of this meeting, and it should be reflected in the minutes, that at least a portion of this Planning Commission meeting is conducted pursuant to California Government Code Section 54953, and that Commissioner Alderetti will be participating in this Planning Commission meeting by speakerphone. In accordance with the Brown Act, each teleconference location has been identified in the notice and agenda for this meeting. Are we connected, Karen?
Yes.
Please bear with me while I briefly go through some special procedures required by the Brown Act. I would now like to request that Commissioner Alderetti respond to the following questions. Commissioner Alderetti, can you hear me well?
I can hear you. It's fuzzy, but I can hear you.
Were you able to hear our proceedings on this end up until now?
Yes,
Do you have a copy of the agenda for this meeting?
I do.
Is the agenda posted at the location where you are at?
It is.
Is your location reasonably accessible to the public such that any member of the public could participate in this teleconference from your location if he or she wished to do so?
Yes.
Is there any member of the public there with you who would like to participate in the public comment portion of this meeting or otherwise address any agenda item for this meeting?
No, there is not.
I would now like to ask that any member of the Planning Commission speak up at this time if such commissioner has not been able to clearly hear Commissioner Alderetti. Everybody can hear? Okay. Hearing no comment, the record should reflect that all commissioners present have indicated that they were able to hear Commissioner Alderetti clearly. I would next request that any commissioner, including Commissioner Alderetti, speak up at this time if such commissioner has any reason to believe, based on voice recognition or otherwise, that the person representing himself to be Commissioner Alderetti is not truly so. Okay. Hearing no comment, the record should reflect that no commissioner has expressed doubt that Commissioner Alderetti is participating by teleconference along with planning commissioners present here. I would now like to advise the Planning Commission and the Secretary that any votes taken during the teleconference portion of this meeting must be taken by a roll call. Will the Secretary please proceed with roll call?
Eric Alderetti,
Here.
Phil Becerra,
Here.
Bruce Bauer,
Here.
James Gartner,
Here.
Sean Mill,
Here.
Lynette Verino. Here. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
This is a portion for public comments. Does a member of the public have any public comments on non-agenda items? If so, you may fill out a request to speak form with the Secretary, and after introduction, have 3 minutes to speak, unless an extension of time is granted by the Chairman. The first item of business is a consent calendar. Do we have a motion to approve items on the consent calendar?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor via roll call. So Commissioner Becerra.
Aye.
Commissioner Verino,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mill,
Aye.
Commissioner Bauer,
Aye.
and Chairman James Gardner, aye. And Eric Alderetti?
Aye.
We have, motion has carried unanimously, with Eric Alderetti participating via teleconference. The next item is Commissioner Disclosure, Commissioner Communication Disclosure. Do any commissioners have anything they wish to discuss with regards to items on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. This is the time and place for the public hearing on item number 1. Conditional use permit 2015-19. Ali, you're up.
Thank you, Chairman Gartner. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Up for discussion tonight is Knife and Glass Restaurant, CUP number 2015-19, for the property located at 601 East Santa Ana Boulevard, Unit A. This project proposes to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits at a new restaurant that's currently carrying out tenant improvements to locate at The Roost, which is a new mixed-use development located at the subject address. The application to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits requires approval of a conditional use permit. The site, as highlighted in this image, is located as identified by the arrow and is in the transit zoning code, and it is surrounded by residential and religious land uses. This is the site and floor plan. The site plan depicts the structures on the property, including shipping containers that have been repurposed to function as part of the restaurant facility, as well as an existing commercial building that was rehabilitated to house 2 tenants and some residential structures as well. The site plan also contains a highlighted portion which shows a floor plan of the restaurant that is currently undergoing tenant improvements with the outdoor seating and the kitchen facilities. This site photo shows the site as it appeared recently. The site is nearly complete in terms of the shell improvements. The next phase is for the tenant to put in the equipment and basically house the restaurant. The fenced area at the front shows the outdoor dining area that will contain the proposed approximately 42 seats in the outdoor dining area. When reviewing the site, staff found the site meets all standards of the Santa Ana Municipal Code. The proposed restaurant will contain all the cooking facilities that are required to meet the definition of an eating establishment per the city and the state's definitions for a Type 47 liquor license. The project will also provide an additional dining amenity to residents and visitors in the surrounding area, which more and more is emerging as a mixed-use neighborhood. And code standards will ensure that the facility will remain an eating establishment and will address any sort of nuisances that may take place at this site. Based on the analysis, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve CUP number 2015-19. Be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Are there any questions for staff? From the Commissioner Mill.
Ali, back, it was probably maybe a year ago, we were approving a license for distilled spirits at 5th and Euclid. And we kind of got hung up because it was close to a church. Even though it wasn't really an active church, they claimed to still be there. Looking at this site, it appears to be St. Joseph's at 727 South, or 727 North Minter. That would be right there. So why, he was helping me understand, like in this case, that's not an issue being next to a church.
Thank you for that question. The standards that you're referring to apply to licenses for off-sale, such as stores. They do not apply to on-sale, such as restaurants or eating establishments.
Are there any other questions for staff? Commissioner Alderetti, you have any questions?
No question.
Okay. Do we have any written communication?
No communication received.
In this case, I'll open the public hearing. Let me read a script here regarding public hearing. If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please file a request to speak form with the Secretary. Comments are limited to 3 minutes unless an extension of time is granted by the Chairman. The action of the Planning Commission is final following consent of the City Council unless, if allowed by the Santa Ana Municipal Code, an appeal to the City Council is filed with the Clerk of the Council and a copy is sent to the Planning Department within 10 days from the date of the Commission's action or unless set for public hearing by City Council. I do have 2 speaker cards. One is, these are all agenda item 1. Marco Bello. Mr. Bello? Come on up.
Yes. Hello, members of the council. I'm here because I'm worried about what happened in my neighborhood. This happened to be the same place that the gentleman was talking about. So the problem in my neighborhood looks like the quality of life is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. One of the problems that we had is because most of the people who live around is Hispanic people, and they are afraid to talk about it. So it's like you said, there is San Joseph Church, but it's not just San Joseph Church. Across the street from the place that they're talking about, they got another church, which is Bethel Church. So we have to deal with all those problems around the place where it is right now because we have no parking on the streets. The parking is pretty limited for the neighborhoods. So if you bring this kind of the business to our area, we start getting a lot of problems. One of the problems is when we call the police for any kind of problem, the first thing that we know is we're busy, they're on call, you need to wait. But in another way, if you go to Forest Street downtown, you can see like 6 or 7 car police sitting over there in the regular basis. So when you see those things, the first thing that is happening to me, I've been a resident from Santa Ana for more than 20 years. And every year, look like the progress is just for some people, but not for the people who is living there for years. And the other thing we've been seeing, I've been losing neighbors because they are tired of the crime. They've been tired about many things, like many places selling alcohol. If you go to Forest Street in the middle of the night, on Saturday night, Friday night, Thursday night, you can see a bunch of kids. Probably, I don't know what ages they are, but they're always drunk. We don't want that in our neighborhood. I live across the street from the place, from this restaurant, and let me tell you, it's horrible to get into the night and see that a lot of people drinking all the time. This is not what we expect to have like a city who is thinking to do the best for the citizens, for the residents of Santa Ana. That's what I oppose to this thing, because my neighbors, they don't talk because they don't. Probably unlike me, they don't speak a good English, but we try to do it. We try to do something, and I want to be clear with you guys. We don't want this kind of business next to our neighborhood. Behind this building, who tried to get the license, there is a huge 52 building apartments. Is the place where I live, and believe me, this is not good for my kids. This is not. I really think that this. If you weren't living there, you don't want to lie a place like this next to your kids. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have another speaker, Bernancio Chavez.
Good afternoon. I would like to say these things in Spanish because my English is not too good. So if somebody can translate these things, I will appreciate that. Claro que va a haber problemas, como usted lo mencionó, está San Joseph, pero no es solo San Joseph, son 5 iglesias más. También tenemos 2 escuelas grandes, como Garfield School, y también tenemos San Joseph Elementary School. Especialmente ese pedacito de esa calle ya es problemática para el tráfico. A cada rato se oyen rechinar de llantas por los carros que están pasando. Si le agregamos más personas que estén alcoholizadas a esta zona, el riesgo va a aumentar mayormente. Aquí conmigo traigo más de 450 firmas, y especialmente de mi vecindario, especialmente de San Joseph Church. Yo soy el presidente de la asociación de ese complejo de condominios. Son 52 familias So, literalmente venimos representando a 52 familias. Por si fuera poco, he estado tratando de educarme para poder venir y discutir este tema con ustedes. De acuerdo a la ley de alcohol y tabaco, estarían violando una de las cláusulas que dice que el estacionamiento de estos lugares no deben de estar pegados a una casa habitación. Este lugar está al costado de 2 casas habitaciones. So, desde ahí estamos hasta cierto punto violando la ley. El otro punto más importante es que va a aumentar el riesgo de estos estudiantes cuando vayan de mi vecindario a la escuela. También ese es un punto que la ley dice que se tiene que tomar en consideración. Aquí tengo las 450 firmas. Si ustedes o el que esté encargado de proveer esta licencia procede, nos vamos a tener que organizar y vamos a tener que llevar este caso a una autoridad mayor, porque estamos seguros que esta licencia no se debería de otorgar. Gracias.
Unfortunately, I don't understand Spanish, but can you tell me just in,
Let me tell you, I have more than 450 signatures from my neighborhoods, especially San Joseph Church and my complex. I'm living in a condominium complex, 52 units, and I am the board president. Okay, according with the law, there is 2 issues, big issues that you don't have the right to provide the license to these gentlemen. One is the parking lot for this business. It's behind two habitational units. It's our law to provide license if the parking lot is on one side of the business, the home. The other thing, if this thing increase the risks of the children crossing for go to school, it's our law. So I don't know if I'm grown, but if I'm grown, we will ask another authorities if you have the right or not.
Actually, your English is great. I just wanted to just kind of get a feel for where you were at on it. But you're gonna translate.
I
it.
can
Okay.
translate his statement.
Thanks.
He was concerned not only for St. Joseph Church, but the local 5 churches that are in the vicinity, including the 2 local neighborhood schools, Garfield and St. Joseph Elementary. Stated that there are traffic issues already, not only traffic, vehicular traffic, but also pedestrian. So far, he has 450 signatures. He's the president of the apartment complex where he lives, and he represents 52 families. And he has been educating himself to speak on this matter, and according to his research on ABC policies, parking should not be in proximity close to homes. So he considers in violation of the law, and also stated, as you may have heard, the increased risk to students and youth in the local neighborhood, and stated if you do approve this action, then they will look for a higher authority for more assistance on the matter.
Thank you. Gracias. Unfortunately, this is the original, so I would like to keep it.
Signatures.
The signatures. So if you want, I can bring you a copies.
On the procedure for that.
The signatures is with the name and also the phone numbers if you want to check it out, that the real signatures.
Do you mind, if I may?
Go ahead.
Do you mind if we just take a look real quick?
Yeah.
We'll pass it around and then we'll
Go
give it
go
back.
ahead. Go.
Vince, you gonna make a copy? Yeah, Vince will make a copy.
Okay. Yeah.
Is he going to get it back to us before we vote?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Vince, how long is it going to take? Because if it's going to take,
Yeah, we can, it might be quick.
Well, then, why don't we
Might
just
be
pass
quicker,
around and make
yeah.
a copy after?
Yeah, pass it around and we'll.
If I may ask a question of the gentleman, because it's in Spanish, the beginning of it is Comunidad Religiosa de Templo Betel. That's so the community of Temple Betel.
One is from, well, some of them is from Templo Betel, the other ones is from San Joseph Church.
Okay, so these are parishioners of those two churches?
Some of them, and some of from my apartment, but we're using the same form, so you.
I see that. Okay.
Mr. Chair, in the meantime, while
Commissioner Becerra?
unless we have more questions for him, can we probably get the next speaker up
I
here?
think that's a good idea. This is Sean Coolidge. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, staff, commissioners. Sorry for the disheveled look. I just got back from a trip from overseas, and it's actually colder here than it was over there. So I'm funny. We should talk about the roost and the storage containers. I was visiting a couple businesses overseas, and there was a lot of them that were using the storage container concept, and it was phenomenal. There was coffee, there was sake, there was bars, and it was a great addition to the neighborhood. And you know, I live 5 minutes walking distance from the proposed project. I've been about 10 years, homeowner. I'm somebody who cares deeply about the community. If you guys know my history, I'm one of the founders of the New Farmers Market, which is a very inclusive farmers market to all. You know, I've just Historic Resources Commissioner, HOA President. I'm Mr. Santa Ana. You know, in any way possible, I can promote the city positively. And I fully support this project. And I shared the gentleman who spoke before me the concerns about the neighborhood. I don't think wine and beer is going to be a detriment to our neighborhood. The speeding is definitely an issue down Santa Ana Boulevard. Many of you have heard me before speak about this issue. And you know, until we can update the traffic plan with the streetcar, which would be a great complement to this business, you know, there's not much we can really do. When it comes to like alcohol sales, you know, alcohol is everywhere. Any restaurant in Santa Ana downtown has alcohol sales, and you ask anyone, you know, alcohol sales are pretty much what help them stay afloat. I don't see this being an issue in terms of parking. I mean, parking has always been a challenge in the neighborhood. We've built numerous high-density complexes over and over and over again, and people are still finding ways to park in the neighborhood. Again, I fully support this idea of having a walkable amenity, not only for myself, but the people who have lived here and who deserve, not the yuppies or the loft owners, but people who actually lived here for years and years and grown up in the neighborhood and stayed here and don't want to leave Santa Ana. And so they have this amenity. We've noticed that the Roost has brought a lot of people together, people from out of town, people from my neighborhood, people from the local Latino neighborhoods. Everyone's come together for food. And it's been an amazing addition to our neighborhood. I don't see this, again, I don't see this as an issue in terms of crime or traffic. You know, if the gentleman and I want to discuss afterwards, we have a unit which is rented out just 4 doors down from the Roost, and they're selling pot openly. And I called Santa Ana police, and I said, hey, like, there's dudes like selling pot all the time there. And they're like, can't do anything about it. So I think that's a bigger concern because I see kids buying pot all day long, and I don't think that the the gentleman who was born in Santa Ana, or who grew up in Santa Ana, who's coming back to bring a business to Santa Ana, has the intention of selling alcohol to kids. So I think it's, again, it's a tremendous addition. I thank you for your time, and have a good night.
Thank you.
I'm available for questions, as always.
Next speaker is Jose Leal. Do I have that pronounced right? Close enough, huh?
Good evening, members of the commission. Again, my name is Jose Leal. I am the president of the Lacey Neighborhood Association. I've been president for quite some time, so I'm very familiar with this particular location and the project. The reason why I'm here is because I share the concern that the gentleman sitting back here just spoke to you about. I am here to just let you know that there's residents nearby this location who have some issues with this project. So again, I'm just here to let you know that families are concerned. And so I don't know if, I just wanted to ask, or I believe that it would be a good idea for these families, these residents, to perhaps get more information, have the opportunity to ask their questions and get some answers, and perhaps that would calm their fears and the problem that they believe this might cause for them and their children. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers that have not filled out a card to wish to speak? The applicant? Good evening, Mr. Chow.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, staff, members of the community. My name is Michael Cho of Palmieri Tyler, 1900 Main Street, Suite 700, Irvine, California, 92614. I represent the applicant, Knife and Glass. It is a restaurant that is intended to be walkable. It is repurposing containers to build out the actual structure of the kitchen and storage and those areas that are required to be covered, like a bar. The seating would be outside to enjoy, the weather, and really try to make a connection between the transit center and downtown Santa Ana. Been sitting here with my client, listening to some of the concerns from the neighbors. We've discussed it very briefly, and we understand the concerns. But the project itself is permitted under the zoning code. I think Ali alluded to that in his presentation. Parking is available on site, and I can understand that there may be challenges to parking in the neighborhood in general, but the site is parked pursuant to its underlying entitlements. The proximity to the schools and churches, unfortunately it's there, but this is supposed to be a community type of restaurant. What you're seeing along Santa Ana Boulevard in the Roost, you have a yoga studio, an ice cream shop. Knife and Fork will be coming for an outdoor dining experience. There is a consultant in there helping people do 3D modeling if they needed to. They're just down the street. The applicant is also the owner of Hidden House Coffee, so they're putting in a coffee house down the street, less than a block away. And so this all becomes part of a larger walkable commercial area, again, that has taken vacant buildings that have been vacant for over 10 years and putting them to good use. And in terms of crime, it's our belief that by having a building that's being used and is active, that keeps crime away. Criminals don't like active places. Criminals want to be where it's dark and where they can be hidden. Here, if we can make this street an active street in terms of the community and have some sort of vitality business-wise, I think it actually improves the crime situation. We'd be happy to talk to some of the community groups if they have concerns. I think as presented by staff and the conditions that they've proposed, my client is in agreement with them. We believe those conditions will mitigate any concerns or problems that the community may feel that may arise by having a license there as part of a restaurant. Remember, a restaurant is a permitted use there. We're only here about the alcohol, and whether it's my client or the next restaurant user, it's going to be a restaurant because it's being purpose-built for that particular space. So, again, we welcome your questions if you have any, and we would hope that you would be able to support our project and approve the use permit as conditioned by staff. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Cho? Commissioner Verino?
Mr. Cho, have you made any attempts to have a community meeting with the Lacey Neighborhood Association or any of the nearby churches to reassure them of what your mitigating measures will be to maybe curb noise from people drinking in the patio until midnight on the weekends?
No, we have not made any outreach to any particular group.
Would you be willing to?
We'd be happy to talk to groups.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you.
Are there any other individuals who wish to speak that have or have not filled out this speaker card? In that case, the public hearing is now closed. I'd like to bring this back to the commissions for comments, questions, followed by entertainment of a motion. Any discussion? Motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Becerra.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to adopt a resolution approving conditional use permit number 2015-19.
Do we have a second?
Well, before we vote,
Or
may I make a
discussion.
comment?
Yes.
I mean, I'm concerned about what these residents are saying.
Real
obviously,
quickly, don't we need a second before we have discussion?
Well,
I'll second it for the purpose of discussion.
Okay. Not necessarily. I guess, Lisa, do we need to have a second before we have discussion necessarily?
Well, you open it for discussion before we have the motion, so.
Well, I'll second it for the purpose of discussion. You made a motion. I'll second the
Great.
motion for purpose of discussion.
For discussion, please. Commissioner Bauer.
Yeah, so I mean, I am concerned with what a couple of the residents have pointed out, but I am also concerned that someone has the right, they have the right for a restaurant currently. So, and I think some of the concerns that you have are sort of more broadly speaking, the concerns with the development of that area in total, like parking. But according to what's been permitted, they have sufficient parking for what they intend to do. So I guess the only question here really is the alcohol issue, the beer and alcohol, and whether that's going to impact the neighborhood negatively. And obviously I'd be concerned if that were, and to Commissioner Verino's point, perhaps the restaurant can reach out and see if there's ways that they can limit concerns surrounding those issues. But as far as what's been presented to the commission, I think there's no bar to this restaurant receiving permission to sell wine and alcohol.
Any other?
No, that's all I have.
Any additional discussion? Commissioner Verino.
I would just like to reiterate my concern. If you look at the number of signatures of concern from neighbors, it's pretty tremendous. There's quite a few signatures. So, and I know I'd like to. I understand there's going to be a restaurant. It's a use. It's approved. It's going to happen. There's going to be a restaurant. The issue here is the ABC license. But there's also a couple things I'm concerned about that are outlined in the description of this request. One being that to minimize impacts of the residential uses abutting the property, the seating areas will be oriented towards Santa Ana Boulevard. So my question is, what if they don't mitigate the impacts? What will happen? What are the residents then stuck with people drinking on the patio until midnight on the weekends? That's my number one. Number two, the crime rate in that district is 20% higher. So that also poses a concern to me as well, because that also is the ABC on that property going to contribute to a higher crime rate? That's another concern. I don't know that I have the answers. All I know is that it would, if we didn't at least look into that, I think that for me, I would, not feel comfortable. Lisa, the gentleman made a statement saying something about the ABC rules or laws regarding residential that was in close proximity to that.
I think those are operational policies that ABC has.
So not, okay. So
Actually, we do have operational conditions that are attached, and they're standards required by law in the city of Santa Ana, and they're included in your packet, if that's helpful for you.
And if for some reason the alcohol consumption from the customers was to create a negative impact to the adjacent residents, what do they have? What kind of recourse do they have? Do they have to go to ABC to file a complaint, or would that come to us and then we would re-look at that ABC license?
The complaints would come in, and if they were in violation of the CUP on a regular basis, then we could look at either what we would do would bring it back to you for what we call consideration of revocation or modification of the CUP itself, which would allow you to decide, look at it, see what conditions were successful, or if additional conditions could make it successful, or you could institute revocation procedures. So that would be your three options.
And how long would that process take?
To bring it back to you, it has to come before you first, then it has to be scheduled for a public hearing. It has to be under a public hearing process. And I do not know this now, but the attorney may, but I believe because your CUPs go to council for final action, I'm assuming it would then have to go to council for final action.
Commissioner Becerra, excuse me.
No, I just want to make a last statement. I think my biggest concern is not so much even the ABC, it's really more the operations of the alcohol consumption being an outdoor patio, which is adjacent to residential. An ABC by itself, probably, I don't really have, but it's really more of the situation for that particular establishment.
For point of clarification, although the seating, there's the parking area is between the alcohol seating area or the restaurant seating area and the residential, that large residential project behind it. It's not, there is
So the multifamily residential behind it is only a single story?
No, okay. It's not single story. No.
Thank you. That's all I just wanted to clarify.
Commissioner Becerra, did you have a comment?
Yeah. First, I want to thank the folks from the community, all of you who've come out to speak on this. It's good to see that, one, you guys are paying attention to the agendas, and you guys are seeing the notices, so I appreciate that. My question, I want to ask staff this. Did staff receive any communication from the folks who circulated the petition prior to tonight's hearing?
No.
No,
we engaged in proactive outreach for this project. We worked with our community outreach staff that we have in planning, who communicated with the residential community, various apartment communities, even across the street, the new Triada development that you may have seen in the aerial photo there. Mm-hmm. And we did receive one direct email to that staff person who relayed it to me personally from Latino Health Access.
Okay.
Asking if the city's code has a limit or a quota on the number of ABC licenses. But the question was not specifically about this project.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because we did receive a large amount of signatures, and to me it just seems like normally in these sorts of instances that we've had on the commission, you would receive the signatures or some sort of petition, there'd be dialogue with staff. I kind of feel it's unfortunate for the applicant because Mr. Cho has presented many projects before us, and I think that, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that you probably would have engaged the community had you known there was some sort of concern. So tonight, one of us up here had asked him, would he be willing to meet with the community? Well, we've got, I don't know how many hundreds of signatures that were delivered to us, and the applicant didn't know, staff didn't know, and therefore we find this out tonight at the hearing. And again, I appreciate learning about the concerns, but I just kind of seems, excuse me?
Can I tell you something?
Sure.
I don't know, for example, when Latino Health Access had the project in the community where I live, they were reaching the people, asking the people, what do you want to do? Do you want a park next to you? Do you want this for your kids? Do you want this for your kids, for your families, for the best of the neighborhood? And we, you were having the decision to say yes or no. But at least when they try to do a business like this, they do everything that they can to do the business, but they don't care about the people surrender. So that's one of my worries, because in which kind of city we live.
Excuse me a minute. The actual public hearing's closed. If it's just a matter of asking a question, because we're in discussion up here,
and I want to continue my discussion.
And so sorry, I didn't. You had an opportunity, and that's why we got to go on, Commissioner Becerra.
So with that was my thought on that. As far as the crime rate, I think eyes on the street are very important. I think that was kind of a big principle of the transit zoning code, was to have this sort of eyes on the street. Santa Ana Boulevard, I think once you see the streetcar coming through, folks that will be facing that area. Again, I think we, as Commissioner Bauer brought up, it's not so much the restaurant that's the concern, because first of all, it's permitted by right, it's the alcohol. And that's where, if you look at what's part of the staff report, we have a lengthy list of conditions that are part of our code that mitigate this sort of issue. And, as Commissioner Verino brought up, is there any recourse for us if we want to revoke this thing? And the answer is yes. And I think that it's important for the community to stay on top of this business and make sure that they are following these conditions if this project's approved, because then at that point, you can bring that to staff's attention, which will bring it to the commission's attention, and we can deliberate from there. We have the ability to limit things. And I've seen other cities do this. I know Santa Ana has that same ability. We could go in there and modify a condition. Some cases you limit the hours, sometimes you limit where alcohol could be served. So this is a fairly small establishment. 42 seats inside with, I believe, an additional 7 outside. Relatively small. So the hope is that if there is some sort of rambunctious behavior, the community could let us know and we can try to mitigate that. But to stifle it from the get-go, to me, that seems a little kind of jumping ahead of things.
Commissioner Becerra, excuse me, are you discussing this with us or with the audience or both? Because we're.
Do you want my eyes?
Well, we just want to make sure, because we're trying not to reopen the public hearing. So.
I'm just speaking out loud. It's a public hearing, so I'm speaking to the public.
Okay.
Thank you. And then as far as parking in this area, it's going to be a challenge no matter what goes in there. Even if it stays a dirt lot, parking's going to be a challenge in the area. And I go back to the fact that there's only 42 seats in this place. And I think one of the other speakers talked about the idea that this is supposed to be a community space. This isn't meant to be the Grove in LA. This isn't meant to be the Main Place Mall. This is something where the community will come in. There's ice cream nearby. There's a small business in there. And so my hope is that folks will take a tour of this place and enjoy it when it's there. So again, I'm looking forward to the restaurant opening regardless of whether an alcohol license is adopted. I know it would be probably most likely important for the business plan for that to happen. And so with that being said, I appreciate the concerns the community is bringing forward, and I appreciate some of the concerns I'm hearing up here on the dais. I think these are things that we could face potentially on any of these alcohol licenses that come before us. And I think that, one, we've got mitigations in place here. And number two, we have a mechanism to mitigate any sort of negative impacts, should there even be any that come about.
Is there any additional discussion, Mr. Commissioner Mill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've heard for a long time from folks that live in the downtown area and just to the east how the problem of the alcohol in the downtown kind of spreads out through their neighborhoods after the bars close. And The revelers that are downtown make it in front, park out in front of their houses, continue the party. And this is the first time that I'm seeing the alcohol is now being moved directly into their neighborhood. And I look at the map here, and this particular project, and again, the restaurant is there by right, and if I don't want to speak for the residents that came down, but I believe that, I don't know that they so much have a problem with a restaurant being there as they're concerned about the inundation of alcohol into their community. I look at the map, and most of the time I hear the argument up here a lot, well, you moved next door to this, so you kind of would have expected it there. You live in a downtown area, you kind of expect it. I doubt when these folks bought their property I'm looking, and I've known this area for a long time. There was nothing like this in that area, and this is something new. I can't remember ever since I've been here approving a CUP to allow an ABC license with surrounding this many residential properties. I may be wrong, but I have a pretty good memory of what we've done. And in this, I look to the east of it is single-family homes all the way to Lacey. To the north of it, we have a multifamily, then a single-family, then we have the church. Just across the street, we have a multifamily residential. To the west, we have multifamily residential. So this is surrounded by families in this area. That's a great concern to me, that the alcohol is now leaving the downtown area and it's now coming directly into these folks' neighborhood. The crime, it's 20% higher than the average in the city. As Mr. Coolidge pointed out, they're selling pot in that neighborhood. We're not doing anything. We can't do anything about it. So clearly, we already have ongoing issues there. I know the whole issue of the marijuana dispensaries is an ongoing issue, but we have folks openly selling pot right there in their neighborhood. I don't think this is a good direction to go. I just don't. I seconded the motion for the sake of discussion, but I will not be supporting that motion.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Becerra.
Well, I'd just like to add, as far as for the collective commission here, we've supported licenses near residents. In fact, we supported the Worst House. In fact, we went so far as to support them to be open till 4 a.m. with alcohol being served till 2 a.m. So we've already done that, and we've done it not too far from here, number one. Number two, just up the street is La Chiquita, which is a fantastic restaurant.
Fantastic.
We have alcohol. And then we have a liquor store right around not right around the corner, right next to La Chiquita. So I see that there could be concerns here, and I get that. But to me, what I'm hearing are things that, well, we have these concerns, but we've already, as a collective commission, had actions to the contrary. So it seems kind of, in conflict there.
Commissioner Bauer, do you have additional comments before I make mine?
Well, I just had one comment on the signatures. I did look through those, and my concern with some of those signatures is that it appears they're from the churches themselves, which obviously that's, I don't think, hopefully it won't impact those churches. I know St. Joseph, I go there regularly. And if you put a petition in front of parishioners on a Sunday that says, do you oppose alcohol going in next door, they're going to, by and large, people are going to sign that sort of thing. So that in and of itself isn't persuasive. And I know we have, I think that last liquor license that we approved, which was the problem that Crown area, that was the problem. That was all surrounded by residential. So this isn't unique at all. It's not unusual. You go to Iowa on 17th and on the Flower, that's all surrounded by residential on the back and the rear side. So that in and of itself is not persuasive.
Commissioner Alderetti, do you have any comments?
Yeah, sure. It's been difficult to make out what folks are saying, but I have just a few comments. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. It's a little muffled, but.
Okay, well, we've designated downtown as the place for this type of establishment, And this isn't downtown, though I will admit it's close. But there's a reason why we dedicated downtown for this type of use and not a residential neighborhood. And that's what troubles me, because I am a big fan of the project. I think it's a great design. I think it's a great concept. But having gone to St. Joseph's for years, I'm pretty familiar with that neighborhood, and it concerns me that the connection that we're trying to make to downtown, being a walkable neighborhood, isn't one that I think that we're missing already. I think that connection is there, and I think having a walkable neighborhood is there. I don't think introducing alcohol into it or a restaurant makes it any more there. I'm also concerned just about the outreach. From what I could make out by the applicant's consultant, there wasn't a lot of outreach, but if I'm mistaken in that regard, I apologize. I just couldn't make out the comment.
Any other comments, Commissioner Alderete?
No, that is it.
Okay, I have a comment. First of all, I will be supporting this. I think it's very common for a restaurant to have alcohol sales, as most restaurants can't even make it without that. It's also a very small restaurant. It's a neighborhood scaled place. It's not a nightclub. The hours aren't 1 a.m. The times people are generally commuting to school is not the time people are having drinks. It's daytime. I think it's a great project. I applaud the restaurateur for taking a chance and opening up in a new project. I don't see any reason with the mitigations that are in place for ABC licenses how I could not support it. I think it would be just as much as I appreciate your concern. I just respectfully disagree. So that being said, we have a motion and we have a second, and we have to take votes via roll call. So Commissioner Becerra.
Aye.
Commissioner Verino.
No.
Commissioner Mill.
No.
Commissioner Bauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Alderete.
No.
Chairperson Gartner. Aye. It looks like we have, what do we have here? We've got 3-3. So that goes back to the City Council. What's the...
I just was looking at your bylaws. In the event of an impasse, the chairperson shall offer the proponent of the item the option of, number 1, denial of his or her item, in which case the proponent may appeal to the City Council, or 2, continuing the item to a later date for further consideration by the Commission. Items are deemed an impasse at the discretion of the chair.
Can we speak with the applicant on there? I mean, Commissioner or Mr. Cho, we've got an impasse. Okay, take a few minutes.
I'd be willing to make a subsequent motion for continuance.
I'll second that.
Oh, if I may ask the maker of the motion, for what purpose?
And this would be the only reason.
what
We're talking about... This is the one concern that I have. This is being touted as a neighborhood restaurant, and I think that the neighborhood needs to be engaged. It's the neighborhood of people who live there currently. I think they need to be engaged in the restaurant, what the intentions of the proprietor have. I think the neighborhood, the people that live there, need to feel good that, and at the same time want to frequent the restaurant, because it's in walking distance. They can walk over and grab a sandwich, their soup, maybe have a beer and a burger, or they should be engaged. It should be like La Chiquita, where it's a friendly win-win for everybody, where the people who live adjacent want to frequent and the owners want them to frequent. And I don't get that feeling that that's there yet. And I would, if there was outreach from the applicant to Lacey neighborhood and to the residents, to maybe have a big community meeting. I think if they understand what the intentions are, that this is going to be a small, very established where you're not going to have people, drinking past, what their limits. And I think they might feel better, and they might be okay and feel safe that their kids are going to be, walking around the neighborhood while the restaurant's open. I would feel better approving that if I knew that the neighborhood supported it and that they had a good feeling about it. The continuance is only so that meeting can happen, and so that if that does, and the residents are saying, we get it, we're okay, we support it, we don't think alcohol consumption and ABC is going to be a problem, then you have my vote.
Could you continue that to a date certain?
I would. I'd like to ask the applicant how soon maybe they could be available, and maybe Mr. Leal, how soon maybe you could coordinate a meeting. If that could happen within the next 30 days, then I would entertain a 30-day continuance. Is that feasible? Can you guys get a meeting together with the neighbors in the next 30 days? That's reasonable? 30-day continuance.
Could we do it to your next planning commission meeting? The reason I'm asking is that then we do not have to do a formal renoticing in the paper, but we could just hear some of the...
We could move it. The meeting's in a month. The next meeting's the second Monday of January, so it's roughly a month. The other question I have is, because we reached an impasse, we are able to bring forward a new motion, and was continuing it one of our choices there?
Yes, you have taken an action, so this would be a
subsequent.
A separate motion that you would take on it. So that would be then in January.
January 11th.
25th.
So do we have a
Can we ask the
Mr.
applicant?
Cho, is that continuance sound like a good idea with you guys, or better than a denial?
No, we would definitely prefer the continuance.
Yeah, so would I. So would I.
January 11th date with the holidays, I'm not sure we're going to be able to coordinate schedules and time.
Yeah, that was my same concern.
So
January 25th?
Second meeting.
25th?
Second meeting in January.
Okay.
That's fine.
If you guys are okay with that, I
Now,
support that.
Do we have, since if we have a motion and we have a second, can we have additional discussion before we take our vote?
Yes, we probably need to amend the motion.
So do we have a motion?
Yeah, so my motion would be to continue this item until the January 25th meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We're going to take a roll call vote, but I would like to have discussion before the vote. And I think since I go last all the time, this time I'll go first. Again, by continuing it, what will it make you? Is mostly your vote based on feeling better about making sure the neighbors are comfortable with it versus how are you personally? Are you comfortable with it personally or uncomfortable? In other words, continuing or no continuing, is it? What's your reason for?
I don't think I need to pose my reasoning, do I?
Oh, just.
Do I have to express my reason?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Becerra?
I think you and I share the same sentiment. I think that, in adding any time to an application, to me, my hope is that there's something accomplished. And again, like I had mentioned earlier, I appreciate the community coming out and expressing their concerns, but what was being expressed, I guess just from this whole process here, I don't know what a little follow-up's going to do, but I think that if the applicant's willing to do it and there's an opportunity to bridge some sort of gaps as far as where there's perception issues, then my hope is that things can be resolved and we can have another hearing on this in January.
Well, one thing I do fully agree with is I would certainly prefer that the neighbors liked what's being proposed, needless to say. What I would hate to see happen is maybe some people have an aversion to the alcohol within the restaurant, and it is typical for restaurants to have alcohol, like La Chiquita, et cetera. So if it would, if the result is a positive vote at the end of the day, then the continuance is certainly fine with me. I'll be supporting it. Commissioner Mill, do you have any comments, or anyone else? Commissioner Bauer.
Yeah, I have a suggestion. I mean, obviously we have an impasse because it's tied. I mean, do we want to continue it until such time that we believe someone will be appointed in Commissioner Knowles' seat? That would break any impasse and perhaps address the concerns of the remaining commissioners.
That really, I know that Commissioner Verino, I'm not going to speak for her, but I believe, and hearing what she's saying, is she wants to hear from the community, the neighbors that live there. And there's a potential that she could, if they're feel good about it, she'll feel better about it herself. So I don't think it's, I don't think anybody, I'm not saying let's continue it until someone else gets here. I'm saying that the commissioner to my right says I feel better about having the community reach out.
Well, that's a good reason.
And that's good enough for me. If giving them more time is going to help her reach a decision one way or the other, that's good enough for me. And that's why I'm supporting it, is that she asked if we could do that. I think it's a good idea.
Well, if I may, my only concern, obviously, and I agree, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea. It's always, we want the community, wherever possible, to get as much support wherever possible. At the end of the day, they may just not agree on it. But I definitely agree with the idea of outreach. It's always a good idea. So, but my thought was, if we're going to just be back here at the end of the day, even after that outreach, then there could be a decided vote, but we don't know when that appointment is going to be made, so the continuance I'm fine.
Well, Commissioner Bauer, I think you may get your wish, because if the mayor makes his appointment and the council supports it, we should have somebody seated in that chair by January 25th. So that may be a logical conclusion already. There you go.
Yeah, but we never know which way they would vote, so it doesn't matter. So, no, I would like to say something. Commissioner Chairman, we have folks come down here all the time and talk, and I hear my colleagues always talk about, look, the community came down here. You need to do more outreach to the community. When we were going to build a wall behind a car wash, you guys didn't do enough outreach to the community. This is an alcohol establishment where they're going to be selling alcohol right around these neighbors, and now all of a sudden we've taken this, not all of us, but we're taking a position. Well, that's great you came down here, but too late. You were too late coming to the party. So many times in the past, we've always, when we take a lot of we base a lot of importance on people from the community coming down and speaking to us. And most of the time when that happens, we're like, it's like holy that what they say. And I agree with that. I think that the people who live in the city deserve a voice up here. Now tonight, two gentlemen come down here and folks wanted